Ladies and gentlemen, today we're here with Twombly, who is the founder of Whole Founder, which is an agency helping personal brands turn their social followers into paying customers by building custom sales funnels. Gray, you recently brought a coaching offer from 80K to over 552K in just 7 months using 2 funnels built on Perspective. What's the secret?
Well, first of all, it's good to be here. Excited to chat funnels with you, my favorite subject matter. So one of the reasons why we switched to Perspective in the first place is the ability to quickly launch funnels. And we realized previously when we were working with clients, sometimes it would take anywhere from 30 to 45 days to launch and test a funnel. And one of the benefits that we've found from working with Perspective is our ability to cut that time down to as little as 7 days from, onboarding to actually having a funnel live and putting traffic through it to be able to validate whether or not we're getting our ideal customer, how warm they are. And that just allows us to move a lot faster than previously. So we can troubleshoot and then keep stacking wins, right? So we can take a look at screen recordings, heat mapping, and adjust a funnel so that within 30 to 45 days, it's already producing really efficient results. So ad spend is, increased ad spend is into the tens of thousands of dollars, and then, really efficient return on advertising spend as well. And we found out of the gate that we can get funnels to produce a 5 or 6x ROAS. And then obviously you use that efficiency to be able to scale. And so that's how we were able to, keep stacking wins of testing and creative iteration, but also just, multiple iterations on funnels inside of Perspective to scale this one of our clients from 80 to 552,000 in 7 months.
Talk to me about the process behind scaling that offer from 80 to 550 without getting into the nitty gritty who that was. But if a similar influencer were to come to you and you were to bring them similar results, how would you go about structuring the entire process for them?
Sure. So first thing, always starting with who are we speaking to? And I look at a funnel before we get into the actual visuals. It's all messaging. So who are we speaking to? What are their pains and desires? What is the transformation that person is making for this ideal customer? And then really going into doing sort of deep research on this ideal customer, which is nothing novel. I think the thing that we've recognized is we early on in our growth journey of working with clients, we moved too quickly into video. And in the beginning, whenever we're working with clients, the first thing that we're doing is just really understanding what are the different angles that we're going after and how can we quickly, without getting bogged down by producing different video sales letters or lots of different talking head creatives, how can we use, low-hanging fruit, static ads with crinkled white paper background and pure messaging, right? Pure actual copy on a static ad that allows us to test and iterate on hundreds of different messaging variations until we figure out what is the messaging that really actually earns the click and brings the right person through the funnel. We do the same thing on our first funnel. We usually start with a text sales letter page instead of going video sales letter, which I think is kind of untraditional in some senses, because we can really rapidly change and iterate on messaging without needing to go into video production. And I found that video production really bogs us down. A lot of the times our biggest funnels, we are doing video production, but on that sort of core messaging, iteration is more important to us than sort of talking head and high quality video creative out of the gate. And we can scale into that once we do find those angles and that real core messaging that we're going to use that's resonating with our ideal customer, and we validate that person is coming through the funnel and that the sales team's able to close them. Then we expand into other different styles of creative and give Meta more tools in order to be able to continuously stably bring us our ideal customer at the right price and with a level of efficiency to be able to scale into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in ad spend a month.
That's a very interesting point that I brought in here. I think in the beginning you said that your average results, like you're getting the first funnel out instead of it taking like 30, 45 days. Now it's taking only 7 days. So you're starting with high velocity to find that messaging that really will resonate with the audience before you put in big resources to actually shoot high level production videos. And so would that be the reason they would attribute such success, like the one that scaled from 80 to 550K, or other clients where you got like 7x ROAS or
Yeah,
similar?
I think there's a lot of different elements, right? You've got offer. You've got, do you have a really strong offer? And that's something that we can actually test in the ad account with just pure messaging, static ads with literal text on top of a simple background. And you can test offer language before moving forward. So, Hormozy's first book is $100 million offers for a reason, because if your offer isn't great, then the rest of it becomes really challenging. So the first thing is starting with an incredible offer, no matter what, right? And a lot of that comes down to how are you presenting the offer to this ideal customer, and making sure that you're spending time early on really thinking deeply around this, and ensuring that the language that you're using around the offer is world class, because that makes everything else downstream great. And so that's just part of many years in marketing and understanding what people want and how to do the, sort of the value equation, right? Hormozy's value equation, which most people I think at this point have seen, but dream outcome times perceived likelihood of achievement divided by effort and sacrifice and time delay. So ensuring that you really spend time thinking deeply around each one of those elements or your components and how you're presenting this offer to your ideal customer, it is definitely a foundational thing. Once we have that, then it becomes, how do we resonate with this person? How do we find this person and present this offer in a way that's really enticing to them? And that, I would say, our ability to scale offers quickly using paid ads and funnels usually comes down to our ability to rapidly test ideas. And those ideas are usually around the core messaging as a foundational principle, because at the end of the day, that's what's behind everything. Even if it's a video ad that doesn't say anything, you're still saying something without saying, right? Without using words. So once we understand that in a sort of copy basis and a performance copy or direct response basis, then we can start to expand and build into, different pieces of creative, different funnel styles, even understanding what are the pains and where are they hung up in their journey. In trying to solve this problem for themselves. And then we can start to design what funnel specifically are we going to use to do that. And we'll always try to go for the lowest hanging fruit of presenting the offer to someone, the direct offer, right? Of like, here's how we help people do XYZ, in the coaching space in particular. But then we'll start to layer in some more indirect stuff like lead magnet funnels or challenge funnels to see if we can, fill up the top of the funnel as well. Because at a certain point, one funnel might get you to $250,000 a month, but usually we need to layer in more sort of top of funnel once we've sort of maxed out our text sales letter page or VSL page with directly presenting the offer.
We'll jump into the lead magnet and challenge funnels in a moment, but one thing that I would like to circle back to is essentially this, like the core tenet here seems to be the speed of testing ideas. And it seems like for you throughout this entire sales process, starting with the static ad, where you're actually going to present the offer, all the way through to completion, so that you are actually able to scale these offers. How do you tie the very creative into the landing page of your funnel? Like, what's the next step after someone actually clicks on an ad? How does it look like?
Yeah. So the first of all is congruence in messaging, right? Is the message that you're using on the front end congruent with what people are seeing on the landing page? And so a lot of the times we will just focus, we'll pull in our creative meetings, we'll pull the static ads that are performing well, or whichever ads are performing well in the ad account, into a digital whiteboard. And we will compare the messaging from the ad, both either the ad script or the messaging on the static ad and the primary text, to what is said, particularly on the first fold of the landing page. Having those two things be congruent is as important, if not more important, than having great ads on the front end. And so that's kind of the first thing of, the headline is 80% of the landing page. We spend a lot of time thinking about headlines, and because the headline earns the rest of the click, and the ads need to tie to the headline. So that's kind of the foundation of everything that we're doing downstream, in both the landing page copy and going back into ad ideation and iteration. Again, in the beginning, it's really easy to focus on messaging rather than trying to get into imagery, because that's why we use text sales letter for the most part out of the gate with clients, because it doesn't take us 30 to 45 days to script out a VSL. And there's so many different elements. We're not sure whether it's the lighting or the audio that could be throwing people off from being receptive to the message. When it's pure text, we have a really good understanding of whether or not the messaging is resonating with the audience.
Would you mind sharing with us, showing us one of these funnels?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually an example of a funnel that we built for ourselves. And, very clearly we are presenting, we're calling out the audience in the eyebrow. So high ticket coaches stuck at 20 to 60K months, right? They want to scale above that. How to make a funnel that feels like you and sells like crazy. No cringe, no broy funnels, no sleazy marketing tactics. Build it once, launch it, watch it pay you back in 90 days guaranteed. So we actually tested hundreds of different iterations of headlines, and this is one of the top performing headlines, mostly by click-through rate with our target audience. And that's one of the things that I think most people don't understand how to do, is to test a bunch of different iterations of the number one thing on your landing page. So we've had a lot of conversations and tested a lot of different variations of headlines before moving forward and actually building out the rest of the funnel page, but then also going and scripting ads and figuring out the messaging that we were going to use to hit this target audience, which is high ticket coaches stuck between these two, this sort of revenue range.
How much time does it take for you to spin up such a landing page when you're first testing out?
So to spin up a landing page, once we're done with testing, so we'll run, let's say anywhere between 40 to 100 different iterations of the headline in static images, and we'll run that to the target audience. Once we have that, we have a really good idea of where we're going to go. Now with a combination of, having my business partner as our copywriter, she's a phenomenal copywriter and has lots of experience. But now that we have AI and we have sort of templatized our funnels, once we've done testing, we can move into build and have a full funnel built within 48 to 72 hours. And that's sort of our internal metric. But obviously we don't always present that to clients that way, because there's a lot of approvals back and forth. And we like to buy ourselves a little bit of time. So the goal is, though, that we're able to build out a funnel within 72 hours that's ready to receive traffic.
That's incredible. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, on the screen, it's simple text that you're putting in here and a CTA button. So not overcomplicating anything, just testing out different variations, coming up with a text offer without shooting any complicated videos. I think there's some image down below the CTA button. There you go.
Yep.
Further introducing the offer. Very simple, nothing overcomplicating here. Now, one of the things that you mentioned to me before this podcast was that on some of your funnels, you're actually able to get as much as 90% completion rate on the entire funnel. How does one get such results?
Let me give some context to that statement. One of the things that I love about Perspective is that you guys almost reverse engineered an application form into a funnel tool, right? So it's almost like, Typeform meets ClickFunnels, right? Where, and that's an oversimplification, but what the reason why I love that is that people don't necessarily know what they're getting themselves into. So the ability to quickly move into an application form and build it around the application form is really important. Meta is going to optimize around what you let it optimize around. And so every single funnel that we build, the first step before we even get into it is having a conversation around what are our qualifying attributes of an ideal customer. Because the last thing that we want to do is let Meta optimize around a lead opt-in. We almost always, there's very few situations where we are not disqualifying people along the way or using the conversion API to optimize around events in the funnel, further down the funnel that, post opt-in, post going through all the qualifying questions and arriving to an application form page. Like, we want to make sure that we're only optimizing around qualified leads. And so one of the things that I love about this tool, particularly on indirect funnels, is that people don't fully understand that they may opt in on the front page. So this is a direct to offer funnel, but let's say that if this were a lead magnet, there's a sunk cost fallacy that happens in lead magnets when you're using Perspective. So people come into the funnel, they perhaps put their first name, last name, email, and then click through into what they believe to be submitting their information to receive what's on the other side. But what happens is they're immediately thrown into a set of survey questions. And because they're not directed to a thank you page, they believe, again, this is my hypothesis, but I'm pretty sure that this is psychology unfolding, that they haven't finished their submission, right? So they're not going to get their thing until they actually complete the funnel, which allows you to capture more data points on your leads and ultimately make more informed decisions on how you're going to steer your marketing strategy. And that's been massively beneficial, particularly when we're doing, when we're spending a ton of money, I guess at all levels, but when we're determining what is the next funnel we're going to build, we have all of the survey data that most people on lead magnets would never have. You have no idea who's actually coming into your funnel and downloading the lead magnet if they're just giving you first name, last name, and email. You need to reach out to them, survey them to ask them questions. Whereas now with every single lead magnet funnel that we build, we can see immediately who's coming through and what they care about by asking a few short survey questions. And because this is all mobile optimized, we're having a 90% completion rate on people going through the application forms, even though they've already given us their information and they get technically no benefit from giving us more information, right? So that was a brilliant design by you guys. And we were shocked to see that on lead magnets, we have a 90% completion rate of generally, sometimes as high as 95% of people coming that have already given us their information, right? And are already receiving the thing that they've opted in for, are still answering our questions and before they get to a thank you page.
It's incredible how you're able to leverage that sunk cost fallacy, which is basically you're creating this open loop at the very beginning and people want to get the reward. Like it's standard by now that in any online marketing, you will land at some point on a thank you page. But if you're inputting your information and then you're getting some easy to answer questions, something we've seen across the board that people are getting higher replies by yours, 90% completion rate. That's very, very solid. So also the questions that are asking them are easy to answer, high quality and relevant to them. So they actually follow through. That's also a very,
Correct.
very nice result.
In one note that I'll make, I talked to an engineer about this, is that if you make the first question a very simple, quick win question, we've tested this, that giving someone a quick win on the first question is really important to getting them to complete the thing. If you drown them in options out of the gate, then they will bounce. And we've seen this go from 90% down to sub 60% completion rate by merely making it confusing. So if you can get them a quick win out of the gate, then they're on to the next step. And now you have a much higher likelihood of success in getting them further down the funnel.
That's something that we're also standing by very much. One thing, particularly because if you're thinking about it, you're kind of in your particular funnel structure, you're asking for the input details, like for the contact form at the very beginning. But then once they've submitted that, you kind of need to resell them on why they should go through whatever is about to happen. So yes, we've seen that across the board, that the first question is a no-brainer as much as possible. Like even a question that's completely useless can actually help people answer all the following ones, just because it's super simple to answer. Like, do you own a home, for example? Well, you sure know if you own a home or not. So it's got to be pretty simple to answer for people. But one thing they're doing slightly differently than most people we've spoken to is actually you're asking for the opt-in details on the first page, which is quite interesting. But I think what that gives you is for people who already would be qualified leads, because you're introducing some friction up front, and then you're asking the qualifying question afterwards. The second approach that we've seen work is actually just start with the quiz and collect these quiz questions up front, and then only then ask for the contact details. But for you, it seems like it's been the other approach. So it's actually quite interesting to see.
So I think there's two different buckets going back to what I was saying before. One is, are we directly presenting a high ticket coaching offer or speaking with the sales team, right? Or in this case, the pitch is apply now to see if you qualify, right? The call to action. So if we're basically presenting our core offer, we generally are putting we're putting the opt-in at the end of the funnel, right? So they're going to make it through these qualifying questions,
Right.
and then they would be presented with the opportunity to apply to work with the program, and then they'll be redirected to a calendar booking page. However, on lead magnets, we've as long as we're confident that our messaging is dialed, we like to do the lead capture up front. And that's just been, we've kind of gone back and forth on that one, but we've settled on doing lead capture in the beginning, particularly if we know that we have a large market, large total addressable market that we're going after, and that our email marketing team is talented.
Are you running your lead magnets from paid, or is it purely from organic?
Paid.
Paid. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're getting 11 times ROAS on your lead magnet funnels, or at least one of them.
Yeah. Well, it definitely varies. Yeah. And usually we're finding, so one of the things that we do that I think that's unique in lead magnet funnels is we will actually run them. So I'm going to move over to another funnel quickly here. So here's an example of a lead magnet funnel that I'm going to run you through quickly. So this is a lead magnet funnel on lead magnets. But we do the lead capture up front. So first name, email, phone number. They go through the same series of qualifying questions. And then based on whether or not they're qualified, we redirect them to what we call a while you wait page, right? Or a thank you page, where we actually do a video walkthrough of the lead magnet and then do a soft pitch at the end of the lead magnet. Okay. And then we they have an opportunity to book a call if they were qualified, right? So we usually we'll split the traffic between qualified and unqualified. Qualified leads will have an opportunity to go to a calendar booking page, right? Or to receive the walkthrough of the lead magnet and potentially book a call. And what we've found at scale, when we're spending, sometimes $1,000, $1,500 a day behind these types of funnels, is that we will move the conversion event in Meta from what you would usually do, a lead opt-in, right? We will move the conversion event to schedule. And we found that particularly with high ticket coaching offers, and the ability to do conditional logic, so route leads in one direction or the other, that we can actually get a much higher return on advertising spend than a VSL or a text sales letter page when we run really well done lead magnet funnels. And again, lead magnet funnel, I like to call it indirect funnel. So that could be a challenge, that could be a webinar, right? An evergreen webinar. It could be any form of different, something that is not directly pitching your core offer. But we will actually run this on scheduled traffic and get a much higher return on advertising spend. However, you do need to be spending a relatively significant amount of money to still train up Meta on having enough conversion events for it to do its optimization. So if you're spending, your cost per book call is $250 and you're spending $250 a week, probably not enough of a budget, right? But if you're spending $250 a day, then yes, we found that these funnels can perform better when we're optimizing for schedule.
So what would you say is the benchmark for testing to actually have meaningful results here? 7 times weekly, or as you said, cost per lead daily on Meta ads, or would it be a broader range?
What would be the minimum spend that we'd want to, or testing budget?
Yes.
So we've run it. We'd start out on lead, and then lead, or we will actually optimize for people landing on this page. So we'll drop in another event on this page where we might do a complete registration event and start to optimize for that so that we get a cheaper, right? Now we're optimizing for the qualified leads landing on this page, to be able to optimize around the qualified leads, not just the opt-ins. And so we'll ideally, Meta's recommendation is that I believe it's 20 to 30 conversions a week is sort of the minimum number of conversions that the Pixel or the AI brain needs in order to be able to optimize. However, I think generally we find that sort of one conversion a day seems to be enough data. Sometimes it's less than that, right? But we've also noticed that if you drop below that, sometimes it doesn't deliver you what you want. So powerful tool. And then, you'd say the same thing for, we'll call it maybe somewhere between $100 to $250 a day to be able to optimize for a schedule event.
It's a very useful tip they're giving here. It's not necessarily what Meta is trying to sell you to actually spend with them to test out if that's going to work. as you're saying, one conversion event a day can already work. I look great. That's the the whole lead magnet funnel that you're presenting to me here. That's super interesting. They're able to run it profitably on paid. I just remember speaking with another agency owner. He's actually has a coaching group for other agency owners. I think like 600 or 700 people in that group, and he said that he has never seen someone run profitably a paid ads funnel for lead magnets. So I'll actually need to put you in touch with him because that's very interesting. And talking about lead magnet funnels or different indirect offer funnels, you may already mention a webinar funnel, you already mentioned a challenge funnel, lead magnet funnel. Could you give us a breakdown of what are the different types of non-direct offers and which one have you seen work best, at least for your high ticket coaching
Yeah.
audience?
So one of the top ones that we've been working with is a challenge funnel. I'd say that's probably the most volume of profit that we've generated for any one of our clients has come from a challenge funnel. However, I think that there isn't a one size fits all funnel. Our whole methodology, we call it the one funnel method, but the idea is that your business and your ideal customer require a unique funnel. And sure, you can take a funnel and say, webinar funnels work great for real estate investment coaches. But what we found over time is that we really customize our go-to-market strategy around the particular business that we're working with. How much proof do you have, right? Do you have, hundreds of case studies, or are you on your fifth case study? How saturated is your marketplace? How much information do your buyers need in order to how many belief dominoes do we need to knock over before they're ready to buy? Or are you like us? We're a marketing agency. There are a lot of marketing agencies that target high ticket coaches. So the people are already solution aware, right? They're just skeptical. And so the way that we approach each project, we might have two real estate investment coaches, right? Selling a very similar thing, but we might build two entirely different funnels. And that's going to come down to a lot of different factors that we calculate, that we take into consideration based on the maturity of their offer, how many case studies and testimonials, like I said, are they going after really wealthy real estate investors or newbie real estate investors? So all of these things are factors that we take into consideration when we determine what type of funnel that we're going to build for somebody. I would say that less of the funnel type in particular and more of what problem are we solving if we're going indirect is really important, because there's so many different problems using the real estate investment. There's so many different challenges in becoming a real estate investor or buying profitable real estate. However, we find that there's sort of an 80-20 Pareto principle where 80% of the market is hung up on 20% of the problems or the processes or the steps, or we call them the jobs to be done, right? The steps that this person needs to take in order to become a real estate investor or buy their next profitable property. Where are they hung up in that journey? That's where we want to focus on. So we want to figure out what is that one domino that if we could help them analyze a deal better, that would allow them to become a real estate investor. That would unblock that one thing that's been holding them up for the past 2 years that's kept them from actually committing. And if we can be the people to help them solve that problem, then they're going to be much more receptive to joining our program. That's going to help them with the next 3 steps that they need to take in order to sort of completely close the loop on becoming a real estate investor or buying their next profitable property. And then the format, right, which is what you're talking about, of which particular style of funnel or which particular funnel archetype are we going to use to do that? There's so many different great ones. I think half of it comes down to as well, what are you really good at as a founder? Do you feel great on camera? Are you great going live? Because as artificial intelligence becomes more prevalent in all marketing materials, and now sales reps are turning into AI agents and appointment setters are turning into AI agents, authentic interaction is going to become more and more important. And so we are running right now a number of different funnels, some evergreen, some live, but we're finding that the more high quality touch points that you can have with someone. I know that you guys are running a live webinar every single week, right? Or every other week. And I believe that if you feel great on camera, you feel comfortable doing that, you can make that commitment to doing a live webinar weekly or a live event or a workshop weekly, I think you will win in the long run. However, I think most people are looking for the quick win to be like, yeah, I'm going to record one webinar. It's going to be great. And then I'm going to make millions of dollars. And that's just not the case for the most part. So I think we always try to be in tune with our customer and what their superpowers are. And if they're just not great on camera or they don't have the time, then we're going to stray away from something like a live webinar. And we might go more into something like an evergreen challenge funnel or a lead magnet. But my perspective from the beginning is always, what's the lowest hanging fruit that we can get to get you quick wins? And that's going to allow us to also scale in the long run. And that sometimes might be a simple one-page PDF. But for the most part, it's usually looking for authentic interaction with an ideal customer.
Right. And it also comes down to effort that you need to put in to actually spin up a webinar that we're going to present live in a regular cadence versus actually sharing a one-pager that you've already prepared. But as you're saying, this is something that can allow you to go to market way faster. So would it be fair to say that in some cases you're starting with this simple one-pager or simple challenge file, and then as you're continuing and seeing what actually works, then you're developing this webinar offer, or are you usually sticking to what you chose in the first place?
For the most part, we would not go through the process of building out a webinar as our primary funnel, and that's just because why go through the process of doing a live webinar every week if you don't have to, right? I think there's some offers that require a lot of upfront education, and people just don't fully understand. Like, it might be a great opportunity that the market's aware about, but it requires a lot of the people are not solution aware, right? They are problem aware. And so we need to move them into solution aware, and webinar can be a great vehicle to do that if you're really good on camera and you're comfortable and you can maintain their attention, you retain their attention. But yeah, we're not necessarily coming out of the gate and saying that everyone should be building a webinar. Ideally, we are honing in on what is that job that they're hung up on, right? Where are they stuck in their journey? The ideal customer is stuck somewhere, right? And can we help them alleviate that and get them, we call them quick win funnels, right? Can we get them a quick win in 13 minutes by walking them through how we build lead magnets? Because they're likely, we found that a lot of coaches think that they need a lead magnet or think that they need this thing, and that's going to be the one thing that solves everything for growing their business. But in reality, it's bigger than that. And that helps going through this is in some senses a mini webinar, right? We are going through and walking them through a process of how to solve a problem, and then we are making a pitch at the end. And so you can take a simple PDF that you can basically, extract from your own brain, put into a Google Doc, and then run through it on a Loom video. Very informal, very tactical. It doesn't feel like you're being pitched. And then at the end, it's like, hey, if you would like help solving this is what we do for people all day, every day. Book a call below to figure out whether or not we could be a good fit to work together. So this is so much easier to launch, and could take us a week to 2 weeks to launch something like this. Whereas a webinar, you got to build the decks, you got to go through and get the tech stack set up, right? You got to make sure that you have all the email follow-up, it's a huge lift. So yeah, we're always looking for the lowest hanging fruit to get our clients really profitable ad spend on Meta, and that's going to allow us to scale together and be a good growth partner.
Amazing, great. Let's take a segue and talk a little bit more about the industry that you're actually working with. So high ticket coaches across all the different niches. Where have you seen this space move in the last 3 to 5 years, especially in the era of AI? How is high ticket coaching changing?
Yeah, great question. I think it's something this is a question we're asking ourselves weekly now. Most of the time you'd sit down at the beginning of the year and go like, all right, where do we think the industry is going this year? But AI is moving so fast that you have to sort of keep your finger on the pulse. And now you've got a full-time job of just even understanding what is going on, what new tools are available, right? So a friend of mine in the growth marketing space said this, that basically information is now free, right? So previously you used to be able to build this course that, this digital product that people could put themselves through, and you showed them all of this new information that was going to help. They were going to be able to apply to their business or their whatever it is, their life, and get an outcome. Now we've got that information, probably even more information accessible to us within 30 seconds of opening up ChatGPT or another large language model. So what is still really important and only becoming, now there's the sea of information, so people are lost. What is only becoming more prevalent is that implementation is equally, if not more important than ever before. And so I think where the industry is headed in general is that you need to be thinking deeply around how am I collapsing the amount of time that it takes for my clients to get results, and how am I making myself really important in that process, right? Because they have all the information they could ever need. In fact, they're drowning in information. So what it really is stripping away the 99% of things that they don't need and figuring out what that 1 to 5% is that they do need, and helping them to implement that in their lives or their business. And so that's where we see things going. I think the days of, download my, buy my $500 digital course is slowly but surely fading away. I think the high ticket coaching space and education space isn't going anywhere. It's the compound annual growth rate is really great year over year in the online education space, but I think it's more so about implementation and how you're looking at those pieces of the value equation and asking yourself on a monthly basis, how can I add more value by continuing to refine my process of implementation and helping people get what their dream outcome is faster and with less effort than before using artificial intelligence.
Are there any tactics that you've seen across the board work for different niches?
I think one of the easiest ways is to just figure out how are you actively, right? If we're talking to coaches here, how are you actively using artificial intelligence to collapse the amount of time that it takes to get your results? And then how can you productize or incorporate those methods into your current process? So it's not necessarily like entirely uprooting what you've been doing, but it's more of how can I continue to innovate in my own process of getting the outcome? If that's, buying real estate, for example, using the real estate investment example, how am I making it easier for myself? And how are my colleagues or how are my peers leveraging artificial intelligence? And then how can I make this accessible to my community as well? Or even, building out your own models or doing some form of productization.
All right. Well, if we're considering this, everybody who's running a business, like we all are using AI, and it just comes to us organically when we're trying to develop or improve some of our own internal processes. But if you consider how you can package that into the offer that you're giving someone, all the same principles apply, right? If AI was able to save you time, you should be able to save time for your clients as well. It's so interesting because, as you said, like the industry that was standing on information for such a long time, they were used to known as the info product. Also, another thing that I've seen quite a lot, and we recently had on the podcast one of the founders of MemberUp, which is basically a competitor of School.
Good.
So platforms for communities and for building and for generally for building communities around your brand. How have you seen the community play a role in high ticket coaching versus just the information in the last years?
Great question. Like I said earlier, I think authentic interaction is the thing that's becoming more and more valuable as as a society getting more just disconnected from each other. I mean, the screen consumption time continues to go up. So I don't think you're going to lose by investing more in your community, right? And what that looks like exactly, I think is unique to each individual offer and person. But continuing to nurture that community and getting people who are champions or who are sort of your diehard fans to sort of ascend into being more involved with your offer or your community, I think is really, really important. School did this really well in gamifying interaction between members, right? And unlocking prizes and having leaderboards. So I think a lot of these communities are already doing a good job, or these SaaS tools that are supporting these communities are doing a good job of incentivizing it. But the most successful coaching offers that we're working on, they have full-time dedicated customer success reps who are measuring user engagement. And that's something that, in smaller, in an info product, you don't even consider that, right? You're just like, how much was my return on advertising spend of my $97 mini
Mm,
course, right?
got it.
So yeah, I think continuing to invest into that, whatever capacity that looks like for you, whether that's just getting more hours of spending time engaging with your users or calling them up and asking them, surveying them what's valuable to them and what do they need help with, and just continuing to be a good human being of service to others in this world, I think is something that in the long run you're going to win.
Amazing. Great. Look, thank you very much. And before we wrap up the podcast, there's one last question that I want to ask you, which is there anything else that I would like to add to our audience before we end this?
If you're not on Perspective, get on Perspective. Um, and
We didn't pay you for it.
no,
We
they
didn't pay
they
you for
didn't
it.
pay me for this, but listen, I'm super grateful that you guys put in so much effort into this tool. I think it's rare that I find a tool where there's almost nothing that I'm like, I wish this was different. And what it's allowed us to do as a team is go back to focusing on the things that really matter in marketing, which is understanding someone's pains and desires and how to speak to them so that we're spending 50% or 100% less time worried about tech breakages and having to have multiple additional team members to even just build out a funnel. Now you can do it. You can use one of your incredibly designed mobile optimized templates and focus on what matters, like you saw in the funnels that I shared today, which is the messaging. How are you connecting with someone through messaging, through imagery? And you guys have done an incredible job of making that easy for people. So I'm very bullish on Perspective in 2025 and 2026.
Appreciate it. Great. And for people who want to connect with you and who would like to go through one of your funnels to actually end up booking a call with you, where they can do it.
Yeah, so the company is called Whole Founder. We're wholefounder.com. That's our website page. You can we'll find a way of sharing the tech sales letter page we'll put the link there. My Instagram handle is chef_gray. I was a private chef before I got into the world of marketing many years ago. But I'm still cooking up funnels. And no, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today, Leon, and excited to continue to collaborate with you guys in the future.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, that was great, Twombly.